Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Good evening, dear friends. I am your headmister, Stefan Gearhart.
And I am your co-mister, the man with no name, Lance Wayne.
And we are the Misters of the Dark.
Join us as we discuss everything from horror books, films,
and even pretty princesses. Join us every other Tuesday in our dilapidated mansion. You never know what's going to happen next.
Only on the Fearscape Media Network.
That's a good laugh.
Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basements may contain graphic, violent, vulgar, or explicit content not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement. It's Lindsey, and we are ever closer to our favorite time of year, Halloween. You know what that means? Time for another Halloween classics. So we've done the classic of classics with vampires and werewolves, but today we're going a little bit more modern by getting into the classic zombies. And let me just say, I felt like I was in a zombie movie before I was recording this. I did a Starbucks run to decompress from what I was working on before, and I got trapped in the parking lot in my car because this horde of teenagers were just hanging out like right behind my car. And then finally they moved and another group came, and then they finally moved. I got my chance. I started backing out, and as I'm backing out, like, you know, you look around while you're backing out, I see like just this huge horde of teenagers walking towards where I'm at. And I'm just like, this is a zombie movie, but also why are these teens just hanging out in the parking lot in their free time? Like there's other places to be. And I get they were probably walking back towards the school because they have like free like range lunch or whatever. I don't know what it's called. Probably not free range. They're not chickens. But anyways, why are you just in the middle of the parking lot behind cars that are trying to drive? But I digress. Anyways, back to zombies. For starters, let's get to the obvious. What is a zombie? Usually they're portrayed as flesh-eating decaying corpses that are like either a reawakened corpse with a ravenous appetite or someone that was bitten by another zombie with some sort of like zombie virus going on. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong because I stopped watching the show years ago. But in The Walking Dead, isn't the zombie virus actually airborne? So while being bit did cause them to turn, like eventually everyone would turn just by dying. I don't know. Anyways, but zombies seem to be everywhere in the 21st century, from horror games like Left 4 Dead or Resident Evil, which, side note, Ice Nine Kills has a great song about Resident Evil called Rainy Day. They're in TV shows like The Walking Dead, movies ranging from like World War Z and Dawn of the Dead, which shout out to My Chemical Romance for their song Sunsets Over Monroeville about Dawn of the Dead. I'll get more into that later. Michael Jackson's Thriller, and even Hocus Pocus, because Billy's considered a zombie, right? Because I mean, he's a reanimated corpse. He just doesn't try to eat people. He's just going around listening to what the witches say. Kind of. Anyways, I digress again. And like hell, even I have a zombie short story in my first book, Paranormalish. They are truly a hot topic and a popular costume and decoration around Halloween. But when did the idea of the zombie start? I personally thought it was a rather modern thing until I worked at Party City several years ago. And one year there was like this little end cap section of super old horror movies. And while I was cleaning up one night, I noticed that there was a zombie film in the collection from the 1930s. and I thought for sure that this had to be the very first zombie movie ever. And I honestly, I cannot remember what it was called. I could have sworn I had bought it back then, but I checked my DVD shelf when I was doing all my research and I didn't see it. So if I did buy it, it's long gone. So I don't remember what it was called. But Google did tell me that the oldest zombie movie was called White Zombie, and it is from 1932. So maybe that's what the DVD was. But even if the 1932 film was the oldest zombie movie, the history of zombies goes much further into the past than that. At this point, you probably know where I'm about to say is the possible first origin of zombies because it's everything leads back to it. And if you guessed ancient Greece, that would be correct. Apparently, archaeologists found many ancient graves with bodies pinned down by rocks or other heavy objects in ancient Greek ruins and stuff. It's believed that they could have been buried that way as out of fear of the corpse reanimating. Zombie folklore also dates back centuries in Haiti, possibly originating in the 17th century when West African slaves were brought in to work on sugarcane plantations. I'm going to take a moment to read to you all out of an article from The Atlantic titled The Tragic Forgotten History of Zombies, and the link to the entire article will, of course, be in my sources, as always. But the zombie myth is far older and more rooted in history than the blinkered arc of American pop culture suggests. It first appeared in Haiti in the 17th and 18th centuries when the country was known as Saint-Domingue. Sorry, I tried. But was ruled by France, which hauled in African slaves to work on sugar plantations. Slavery in Saint-Domingue under the French was extremely brutal. Half of the slaves brought in from Africa were worked to death within a few years, which led only to the capture and import of more. In the hundreds of years since, the zombie myth has been widely appropriated by American pop culture in a way that whitewashes its origins and turns the undead into a platform of escapist fantasy. The original brains-eating fiend was a slave, not to the flesh of others, but to his own. The zombie archetype, as it appeared in Haiti and mirrored the inhumanity that existed there from 1625 to around 1800, was a projection of the African slave's relentless misery and subjugation. Haitian slaves believed that the dying would release them back to Guinea, literally Guinea, or Africa in general, a kind of afterlife where they could be free. I apologize for the pronunciation there. Though suicide was common among slaves, those who took their own lives wouldn't be allowed to return. Instead, they'd be condemned to skulk the Hispaniola plantations for eternity. There's an article from NPR that has a quote from Amy Wielance that says, "Suicide was the slave's only way to take control over his or her own body, and yet the fear of becoming a zombie might stop them from doing so. This final rest in green, leafy, heavenly Africa, with no sugarcane to cut and no master to appease to or serve, is unavailable to the zombie. To become a zombie was the slave's worst nightmare. To be dead and still a slave, an eternal field hand." Undead slaves at once denied their own bodies and yet trapped inside of them, soulless zombies. After the Haitian Revolution in 1804 and the end of the French colonialism, the zombie became a part of Haiti's folklore. The myth evolved slightly and was folded into the voodoo religion, with Haitians believing zombies were corpses reanimated by shamans and voodoo priests. Sorcerers, known as Bokor, used their bewitched undead as free labor to carry out nefarious tasks. This was the post-colonialism zombie, the emblem of the nation haunted by the legacy of the slavery and ever wary of its reinstitution. As the UC Irvine professor Amy Wielance has pointed out in her writing on zombies, on several occasions after the revolution, Haiti teetered on the brink of reinstating slavery. The zombies of the Haitian voodoo religion were more of a fractured representation of the anxieties of slavery, mixed as they were with the occult trappings of sorcerers and necromancy. Even then, the zombies' roots in the horrors of slavery were already facing dilution. It was in this form, voodoo, bokor, and black magic, that the Haitian myth first crossed paths with American culture in the aforementioned White Zombie. Although the film doesn't begin to transform the undead in the way that Romero's films, which is Dawn of the Dead, and the subsequent zombie industrial complex would, it is notable for its introduction of white people as interlopers in the zombie legend. It would take another few decades or so, but eventually the memory of Haiti's colonialist history and the suffering it wrought millions of Africans worked into the grave would be excised from the zombie myth for good. And I just thought that was really interesting to read. Going a little bit more into the zombies being a part of the voodoo religion. So, voodoo is a religion based in West Africa and practiced throughout Haiti and the Caribbean, Brazil, and the American South and other places with African heritage. Many people who follow the voodoo religion today believe that zombies are myths, but some believe that zombies are people revived by the practitioner known as the Bokor, as we said in the Atlantic article. Bokors have a tradition of using herbs, shells, fish, animal parts, bones, and other objects to create concoctions, including zombie powders, which contain tetrodotoxin. Sorry if I said that wrong. A deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish and some other marine species. Used carefully at sublethal doses, the tetrodotoxin combination may cause zombie-like symptoms such as difficulty walking, mental confusion, and respiratory problems. High doses of tetrodotoxin can lead to paralysis and coma. This could cause someone to appear dead and be buried alive and then later revived. So that's just like a little bit more detail into the voodoo aspect of it. But of course, if zombie folklore was in Haiti because of West African slaves, that made me think there must be some origin in African folklore, right? Well, according to Wikipedia, a Central or West African origin for the Haitian zombie has been postulated based on two etymologies in the Congo language: Nzambi, meaning God, or Zumbi, meaning fetish. This root helps form the names of several deities, including the Congo creator deity Nzambi Mabungo, I'm so sorry, and the Louisiana serpent deity, the Grand Zombie, a local version of the Haitian Dambala. But it is in fact a generic word for a divine spirit. The common African conception of being under these names is more similar to the incorporeal zombie astral, as in Congo Nkisi spirits. I'm so sorry. I should have looked up those pronunciations. A related but also often incorporeal undead being is the Jumbi of the English-speaking Caribbean, considered to be of the same etymology. In the French West Indies also, local zombies are recognized, but these are more of a general spirit nature. The idea of physical zombie-like creatures is present in some South African cultures where they are called, I can't find the pronunciation for this word, it's Xidacachane. And Madoxwain, I'm sorry, I can't find these pronunciations for some reason. In some communities, it is believed that a dead person can be zombified by a small child. Why is it always kids? Kids can be so scary. It is said that the spell can be broken by powerful enough sangoma. It is also believed in some areas of South Africa that witches can zombify a person by killing and possessing the victim's body to force it into slave labor, which goes right along with what they were saying with voodoo in Haiti. After rail lines were built to transport migrant workers, stories emerged about witch trains. These trains appeared ordinary, but were staffed by zombified workers controlled by a witch. The trains would abduct a person boarding at night, and the person would either be zombified or beaten and thrown from the train a distance away from their original location, which is horrifying. But there's even mention of reanimated corpses in the Christian Bible. So while they're not flesh-eating zombies, it's still the zombie and the fact that it's a reanimated corpse. The book of Ezekiel describes a vision where Ezekiel is dropped in a boneyard and prophesies over the bones. The bones start to shake and become covered with muscle and flesh until they're reanimated, yet there was no breath in them. In the book of Isaiah states, "Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead." Moreover, passages abound in both the Old and New Testaments about the resurrection of saints and sinners in the end times, which may be the reason so many zombies are associated with the apocalypse. Which I never would have thought of that without reading this, so that was really interesting. The earliest references to zombies in the United States were closely associated with slavery and connected the word to African traditions. The word zombie, which for years was spelled without the E at the end, first appeared in print in an American newspaper in a reprinted short story called The Unknown Painter in 1838. In the story, which was first published in the Chambers Edinburgh Journal, and then in the U.S. in the Alton Telegraph newspaper, a young African slave owned by a Spanish painter named Bartolome Esteban Murillo claims that a zombie appears in the art studio at night to work on the paintings of Murillo's apprentices. However, no one believes the young slave's assertions and dismisses the existence of the zombie as an African myth. Murillo's famous painting, Adoration of the Magi, features a black man as one of the three wise men. And then, of course, we get into the more modern idea of the zombie as it has been evolved and kind of reinvented over the years. And that is, people often like to claim that the Dawn of the Dead movie is what caused that. And the article from The Atlantic actually states, by the time The Dawn of the Dead was released in 1978, the cultural tide had shifted completely, and Romero had essentially reinvented the zombie for American audiences. So yeah, it got completely changed, whitewashed. It happens, unfortunately, far too often in our history. But there have actually been real-life cases of medical zombies. Though it is rare, there are several credible reports in medical journals of people using these compounds to induce paralysis in people and then revive them from the grave. I am assuming, because this is from the same article that I had mentioned in the more detail about the voodoo, where they talked about the herbs and other concoctions, like with the tetrodotoxin. And I'm assuming that's what they're referencing here by saying that. So it says, a 1997 article in the British medical journal The Lancet described 3 verifiable accounts of zombies. In one case, a Haitian woman who appeared to be dead was buried in a family tomb, only to reappear 3 years later. An investigation revealed that her tomb was filled with stones, and her parents agreed to admit her to a local hospital. In another well-documented case, a Haitian man named Clervius Narcisse entered a local hospital with severe respiratory problems in 1962. After he slipped into a coma, Narcisse was declared dead and was buried shortly thereafter. But 18 years later, a man walked up to Angelina Narcisse in a village marketplace, insisting she was his sister. Doctors, townspeople, and family members all identified him as Clervius, who claimed that he had been buried alive and then was dug up and put to work on a distant sugar plantation. Which, the whole idea, the whole concept of being buried alive is terrifying, right? That's like a huge fear for probably a lot of people, myself included. And so it's possible that these cases are considered zombies because they thought they were dead when really they had some other sort of medical thing going on, whether it was from the tetrodotoxin or something else. And the last story about being buried and then dug up and taken to work on a plantation, like, that is awful. Absolutely awful. So why are we as a people in modern society so obsessed with zombies, like as a culture? And it is actually believed to be linked to history that we are. So according to the Stanford literary scholar Angela Becerra Vijagar, mankind's perception of violence changed drastically after Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed during World War II. Because they were such large-scale disasters, people began fictionalizing their deaths and focus on survival of the fittest, which is a common theme that we see in zombie storylines. And even the CDC has jumped on board with the zombie mania train by creating the Zombie Preparedness website to help people prepare for disasters and offer tips on how to survive the zombie apocalypse. I tried to get on the CDC's website to look at that zombie page, and it was just taking me to other pages. So I'm not sure if it's just down now or if the link was broken. But either way, it was in fact a page. I remember that being a thing. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened to the CDC page. If I end up finding it at some point before I publish this, I'll add it in. Yeah, I can't find it. I keep finding all sorts of other things except for the CDC's zombie website. So anyways, jumping back earlier, I had mentioned that I would get into the My Chemical Romance song later, which also, I believe I referenced a My Chemical Romance song in the vampire episode, or maybe it was a different episode, but I remember talking about that, though. You Put the Spike in My Heart. That's irrelevant. I just remembered that. But anyways, I'm going to get into why I said that. So on My Chemical Romance's debut album, there is a song called Early Sunsets Over Monroeville. And this song is actually referencing Dawn of the Dead. And I believe I've heard that Gerard Way wrote it after laughing at the escalator scene and watching it over and over and over again. And I have always loved that song and would listen to it on repeat. I was actually listening to it on repeat today in preparation for this episode. So I would listen to it on repeat, and eventually a story started to form in my mind around it. And it got to the point where in 2009, I believe it was, I actually wrote a story, and that's how my very own zombie apocalypse story, which is titled From a Gun to the Mountains, was born. And the story is featured in my very first book, Paranormalish, which actually just turned 7 on October 13th. So that's really cool. But I always thought it was kind of cool that there's a zombie movie that inspired a song, which inspired a completely different zombie story. And I think might read you guys that story on here. So stick around to the end of the episode and I will add that in. We'll see if I can get through it. Otherwise, I'll cut this out in editing because it makes me cry. But it's a good story. And I figure for fun, maybe I'll read it to you guys. But that right there wraps up another Halloween Classics. And I had no idea that zombie culture had such a rich history. I thought it was just movies and video games and TV shows and all of that. I didn't realize there was such a significant history behind it, but I'm glad that I know that now. It definitely puts a new perspective on things. So I'm really glad that I decided to pick zombies as one of the Halloween classics. And before we go, just a little bit of housekeeping. I wanted to give a shout out to our newest listeners. We have now gained the countries of Thailand, Denmark, and Norway. I see you guys. I see all of you who are listening. And I have to say, I almost screamed when I saw Norway. Because if you remember, way back when we had Fairy Tale Fix on our show, I had told them that I've always wanted to do an episode based on the real Norwegian and Scandinavian legends and folklore that are referenced in the Frozen franchise. And it never really felt like a good time to do that, even though I have had notes started since January of this year for an episode on that. And so now that we have Norway here and everyone knows Frozen is supposed to take place in a fictional version of Norway. So stay tuned for that to be coming around. I'm finally going to do that episode. But, which of course brings me to an even bigger housekeeping note. In the previous episode, I had said that given everything that has happened, I would likely be taking a hiatus after we wrap up October with the episode that comes out on October 28th. It'll be another Halloween Classics. And now that I've had a little bit more time to process things, my current plan moving forward is to try to just continue on and to keep on trucking. Of course, there are major changes I have to think about because the whole setup's different now. And so bear with me, please. I will try to get the episodes out every other week. If I ever can't, you guys know I will reach out. But if I do end up needing to schedule a break in order to regroup and figure out this podcast, I will let you guys know. I appreciate your all support. It means the absolute world to me. I've had a lot of encouragement since the announcement from some people, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, no matter what choice I make, whether it's take a break, keep going every 2 weeks, whatever, I will keep you guys in the know. And I will also say, you all know that whenever we have a major announcement, we try to post it on our channel or on our show, like as an audio, as well as our socials, because I know that not everybody's on social media. But if the only place you follow us is Instagram, I'm having technical difficulties with Instagram right now. I am not sure why it's not working, but I would highly suggest keeping a lookout on wherever you listen to our show for any announcements, and B, consider finding us on Twitter or Facebook. It's all GABB Podcast. Or you can reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or fun stories you want to tell me at gabbpodcast@gmail.com. Hopefully I can get Instagram fixed, but if not, there are other places you can find me. With all of that being said, until next time, listeners, stay spooky. Bye. Stay tuned for a reading of my story, From a Gun to the Mountains. What is this? What is this weight in my hand? This gun. My enemy. How did this happen? How the fuck did this happen? It wasn't supposed to be this way. We were supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be perfect. Every movie's happy ending. But now I'm staring down this barrel into your eyes, The eyes I fell in love with, the eyes that gave me a reason to run, a reason to try to live. They haven't changed yet, your eyes. And it makes this hard, so damn hard. You're writhing in pain and it's starting. I hear the words you spoke before this started. You told me, you forgive me, and it's not my fault. But that doesn't make it any easier. It was my fault. They weren't supposed to find us. And even if they found us, they weren't supposed to catch us. I should have run faster. I should have carried you so you didn't have to run too. I should have done so many things so you wouldn't have to die. Why didn't you make me stop? You said you were fine. You didn't think they got you. Why the fuck didn't I stop the first chance for cover? You're trying to say words and they're so hard to hear, but each familiar sound between your cries makes the gun lower more and more. Your eyes are telling me you're already dead and to just get it over with. I feel like someone's already shot my chest. My mind's racing, the past, both distant and recent, keep repeating, flashing before my eyes. We laughed as the news told us what was going on. We said it had to be some elaborate hoax. We laughed so hard that night, like we did so often. We were shocked when your mom called from across the country. She told us her coworker missed work last week, and they found her this morning. She was crying, and we didn't have the words to console her. It took days for it to sink in. We knew we had to start doing something. We'd head for isolation. We decided to head to the mountains. I remembered when we first met. I was up on stage singing. You were in the front row, and I almost forgot the songs I've written and sang a million times because of your smile. We didn't even make it halfway before the car broke down. Everyone had already fled, so no one was around to fix it. I wanted to find a new car, but you said you didn't mind walking. You thought it'd save time. A few days after we met, we were in my apartment. I was playing you a song and you sang along, leaning closer and closer with each word. Entranced. At the end of the song, you whispered, screw it, and kissed me. We didn't know they were already here. We were enjoying the solitude, walking, holding hands, loving life despite what was going on. For our anniversary, we spent the day at your favorite park. We watched the clouds change shapes, picture to picture. You asked me what I saw. You didn't know I stopped looking. I was looking at you instead. I told you I saw an angel. You asked me where it was. I told you right in front of me, and I hoped it would be forever. When you looked at me, I was holding a black velvet box. Your face was stuck between wanting to smile and wanting to cry. You knocked me onto my back when you lunged to hug me. We were just walking in the middle of the street. It wasn't like we had to worry about cars. We heard a noise come from an alley. I told you to stay back, but you were so scared you wouldn't let go of my arm. When we saw it, we started running. We didn't think, just ran. We sought refuge in an abandoned store. How lucky were we that it had a hunting section? I broke the glass display and we chose our weapons. Your parents were so shocked to see us on their doorstep. We did such a good job hiding our visit from them. When they saw the diamond ring on your finger, they were even happier. They were so sad to see us leave. We stayed in the store for the night. We decided we should find someplace more secure, someplace that didn't have a glass front. I went out the door first. It seemed like we were alone. We started to slowly walk. You came home one day with a garment bag in your hand. I asked to see it, but you told me that would be bad luck. We thought we were safe. We relaxed a little. You told me you heard a noise. I looked down the aisle and I saw you for the first time in that white dress. I must have missed everyone else walking down, but they were standing next to where you would be. I grabbed your hand and we started running. Everyone threw rose petals as we ran to the limo. You said you didn't want to hurt birds by throwing rice. There were more than we thought. I begged you to keep running while I fought them off. You wouldn't leave me behind. We got back from our honeymoon 2 nights later, and for once it really seemed like our apartment. We were running low on ammunition. There wasn't enough left to do enough damage, so we started running. We ran so hard I felt my legs would explode any moment. We didn't even notice we were being followed until it was too late. It was the highlight of my nights to see you always in the front row when I played shows, always smiling like you did that night. But now, that ring on your finger meant you were mine forever. You told me to keep going. Before I could, I stopped and shot that fucker that hurt you. We sat in the hotel room we broke into. I moved all the furniture but the bed to block the door. You told me you felt funny. I looked at your hand and it was bleeding. I sat next to you in the bed and held you close. We weren't sure how this worked, but we made a plan. You made me promise and we sealed it with a kiss. As the night went on, you grew sicker and sicker. You kept reminding me of my promise. You told me, when it came time, it wouldn't be you anymore, so not to worry about hurting you. You told me you forgive me. You said your thoughts were fading, so you knew it was close. You held my face in both of your hands and stared into my eyes. You told me you loved me, and you always will. I told you the same, and we shared one last kiss. Your eyes look different now. They aren't as bright as they were. You're fading, and I don't know how I'm going to do this. Your eyes are starting to look crazed, hungry. I know you're different, but all I hear is you telling me you love me. You don't deserve this. I can't do this to you. You're pulling the restraints we put you in now.
trying to take me. Part of me wants to let that happen, wants to be gone with you, but I promised I'm not going to break that. The gun weighs 1,000 pounds, but I somehow managed to lift it. With a click, it's ready to fire. To end this, to put you out of your misery and put me deeper in mine. Your cries are getting louder and angrier. I know that if you were here, you'd tell me to suck it up and just do it. I can't stand those unfamiliar sounds coming out of your mouth. Everything went silent. My ears are ringing from the sound of the gun. Your eyes are vacant now, more like they used to be than in those last moments. I can't look at them anymore. Despite the shaking, I managed to close your eyes. You look much more peaceful now. I try to walk, but stumble into the wall. I let myself slide to the floor. I throw the now unloaded gun across the room and put a hole in the wall. I didn't think I had that much strength left in me. I feel something fall from my face. I didn't know I had been crying, but now they won't stop. I don't want them to stop. The tears are hiding what's left of you in front of me. I know once the tears are gone, I'll have to keep the rest of the promise. I told you when it was all said and done, I'd leave here. You told me not to worry about bringing you with me. It'd slow you down when you said, I can't do that. I wrap your body in the blanket from the bed and leave, promising you I'll be right back. I walk until I find a car lot. I stole a set of keys in the car that went with them. I put you in the back seat. I'll bury you in the mountains. I promise I'll make it. I'm sorry I did this to you. So fucking sorry. Just know you'll always be with me in these mountains. I know I'll see you again someday. I love you.
Thank you for listening to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement, a Fearscape Media podcast. Music by Stephen Timperley. Artwork by Laura Ramsey. Find us online at fearscapemedia.com/GABB podcast, or on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at GABB podcast, or email us gabbpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.